But first thing first, Eicca, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm doing really well. Everything is going. It's going fantastic. It's going really fantastic.
Okay, that's awesome to
So
hear. Now, obviously, this Bright and Black project is very interesting. What were your thoughts when you were first asked to contribute to this whole project?
um yeah, my first thought was like, oh, this sounds really cool. And actually, on the very earliest, because Jakob started to talk to me, I don't know how many years ago, maybe four
Okay.
years, even 5 years ago, that he has this idea, and it was how to do it wasn't clear at that start. There was thoughts of different soloists, and kind of Jakob involved me in the very early stage when he was still kind of searching for the
Mm.
form of it, and I didn't even know what will be my role. So I was like, okay, I will help you whatever I can, and because Jakob he knows that I have the strong history and knowledge about orchestra world and classical world, how to operate there
Sure.
and all that stuff. So we started to do it together, and Jakob has been all the time the primus motor of the whole thing, and I've been taking the passenger seat role in a way that, okay, or map reader or whatever, like I let him drive, and I'm like kind of like time to time giving him
Take a left, take a right.
him yeah, a little bit like yeah, just doing helping him to explore in all possible ways, and it's been very interesting. It's been very interesting. Sometimes there's been longer periods of time that we haven't done anything together, and then
Mm.
then there's been periods that we've been working more intense, like for example, we started by searching for the sound, that how
Mm.
we want the orchestra to sound like. So we were working a lot of different trying to find right kind of sample libraries so we can actually generate the vision sound wise
Mm.
by ourselves without orchestra, to explore, okay, what kind of instrumentation and what kind of characteristics on different instruments we want to have, and then many of the music that came that from different writers, the songs were not fully complete in a way.
Mm.
They were kind of songs, but there was still a lot of elements missing. Sometimes there were all the top lines were missing, and I then participated on writing those top lines. Sometimes I rearranged the songs, and always threw my ideas to Jakob, and then was like, okay, but you decide. I always left the decision making to Jakob because he was so deep inside the project. So I just always threw my perspective in, and he then evaluated what he agrees and what he disagrees with. And so it's been a really cool project, very free briefing, that there has not
Mm.
been, there have never been a deadline
Okay.
in a way. That Jakob always said that this will be ready when it will be ready, and so it's very interesting to work on something like that. Or at least for me, because in Apocalyptica world, we have a plan, we have a plan
Sure.
structure. Okay, we should get the album done in this and this time, and then because then we need to book the tours, and the whole structure goes in a different way. But this was very free from all outer influences, so it was really focusing on, okay, how this thing should turn out. And the coolest part was that we didn't know, even Jakob didn't know clearly that how it needs to be. I'm sure he had a vision from the very beginning what it should be, but then it was all the time evolving
Sure.
once we learned more and figured out more things. That so it is constant learning process.
Yeah, because
It's
I
really
can
cool.
imagine from your perspective. I mean, you, as you mentioned, you have experience with the classical world and obviously metal, and kind of marrying those two worlds a bit. But this is a different animal, I suppose. You have a full orchestra, all kinds of instruments and musicians that you don't usually have access to. So, what for you was kind of in terms of composing and arranging? What were the challenges and what, what were the surprises?
uh, I think one big challenge, of course, is the rhythmical part, because classical music and classical orchestra is not usually treated rhythmically the same way as we treat like metal band. And a lot of metal music's power comes actually from drums. And when the drummer is one person kind of creating the whole complexity of the rhythmical part, it's a different kind of thing to handle than when you use those orchestra percussions and there are several players. So there are certain limitations that you can't, for example, put two different persons, one plays kick and second one plays a snare, and then you know, like fast beats. It's super difficult, but when you do it alone, it's easy. And as a drummer, so that kind of things. And then to have this kind of harsh power and energy that is on a normal metal sound, like with the distorted guitars. Like for example, there was some songs that we got, the original song was played with like having 4 different distorted guitars, like this fucking wall of guitar sound. And then we take the sound out and we just take the music itself and then figure out, okay, how the spirit of the music will be when it's an orchestra sound. So it was a lot of exploring and a lot of surprises. Like I think Months of Misfortunes, for example, that turned into totally different kind of music. Even the music itself is the same that was on the guitar version, distorted guitar version, but kind of the feel, it became this cinematic, very alive in a different way. So also it was challenging to get the orchestra to play tight enough.
Tight, yeah.
Because in metal world we are used to that it's so tight, especially with picking. You know, with plectra, you pick up the guitar. The attack is very clear, but most of the orchestra instruments, the attack is not so clear. And if you have 10 violins or 10 cellos playing the same stuff, so it gets a little bit more, not muddy, but the definition is very different.
That's interesting, because I can't remember which song it was. It might have been Bloodgrind, but no, it was I think the opening song, Nidhogg. There are these very sharp sounds where it goes kind of like that Hitchcock movie, kind of these sharp sounds. So is it difficult then to get the orchestra to make that sound in a sense?
In a way, yes, but also this orchestra is very special. That they are very experienced on making this special project, and that's why this orchestra was picked to be the one to make this project to happen. That the spirit of the young musicians, it's like they are very open to try new ways of doing things, and they are not stuck on the tradition too much. So I wasn't there at the orchestra rehearsal or the recording, because I was somewhere on tour, of course, myself. So I don't know exactly how the recording process there went, and what kind of challenges they had there.
You mentioned the orchestra, and I believe Kristjan Järvi, who was kind of the conductor of the orchestra, that from what I read, he's kind of like he's not like a normal composer or a normal
conductor.
A conductor, sorry, yeah. So I read the orchestra likes to play without sheet music and those kind of things, very free. And so how did he get involved, or were you part of that, getting him involved?
I think Jakob was very clear that it should be Kristjan. I don't remember had they met somewhere. I know Kristjan because he was the conductor for Wagner Reloaded when we did Wagner Reloaded with Apocalyptica. So Kristjan was the conductor of that. He used to be the main conductor of MDR orchestra in Leipzig that time. So I knew him, and he's a cool guy, and his perspective to music is very open, and absolutely the right conductor for this project, because he's all about exploring new ways to present orchestral music and to create new modern orchestra music that has the connection to classical, but it's still more about creating new than playing the old. And that's very fascinating, and the whole approach to try to make the orchestra more like a living organism. Like those players, they can walk on stage, you know, they can change their position and location. So it's this very explorative free flow thing, and I think therefore I'm super excited to get the live thing going in a couple of weeks to experience how it actually will be in the live setting. Very excited.
Have you practiced with the orchestra already? Because you are going to be the soloist, so you're going to be kind of up front and playing a lot of these things. Have you practiced already with them?
No, I haven't. We will actually have just 4 days of rehearsals before the first concert in Tallinn. So I'm excited. I'm a little bit terrified because also that you know my role in Apocallyptica is I'm the core of the riffs. You know, that's what I play, and playing riffs is closer to shoveling than playing classical cello. So I'm and then the texture when I'm playing on Bright and Black, it's actually closer to the traditional classical cello playing in a way. So I'm a little bit terrified being here on tour and having no time to practice. But so it's gonna be intensive push for me when I get home.
It's gonna be interesting
to get ready. Yeah, but that was also in the studio. You know, being in studio, it was challenging because we wrote a lot of my parts in the studio. You know, they were basic ideas, but then we modified them, and then I had to perform them right away. You know, like figuring out, okay, maybe I should play this, and okay, then perform it. You know, and no time to practice really. So it's gonna be interesting, but I'm very excited to get to the rehearsals and to feel the sound of the orchestra. You know, in live situation. So it's nice that I'm kind of the soloist of the thing, but then not in the traditional way. It's nothing like playing a cello concerto. So I feel like I'm still more like a part of the orchestra. It's definitely about the orchestra. It's not about me. It's not about the soloist. You know, I'm just a part of it. But the main focus is in the orchestra and the sound that the orchestra generates. And I'm just there a little bridge between the metal sound and the classical orchestra sound, you know.
But for instance, I believe Collateral Damage is a piece that you kind of written and arranged and everything. So knowing that 65 people will play that, how do you kind of approach something like that? Is it very free when you know kind of this is going to be played by an orchestra, or is it kind of limiting in a way?
I think it was very free, and I wrote there some things that I wasn't quite sure that this orchestra can manage them. You know, there are some pretty difficult aspects in that song, but I kind of approach it more like, in a way, it's the same way that I would do for Apocaliptica.
Okay.
Because for Apocaliptica, many times also I write music like I just write the music and then we figure out how we can play it. So it's not. I'm not letting even that limit. So I write for us. I write a lot of stuff that it might feel that it's impossible to play like that, but then we just play it like that. You know. So nothing is impossible in a way. So the approach was there for the collateral damage as well. But I loved the fact that I was in the writing process that all the time that I used those sample libraries. So I got the feel of that, okay, this should be oboe, this should be this sound, and, you know, playing with the different characteristics of orchestra. Of course, it was making it very rich, the process of writing it. It was like, oh yeah, this is actually cool. And sometimes I fell in love with some minor parts that people don't understand, and they are most meaningful for me. Like, for example, in the going to the very end where the violins are playing this, this certain parts of the violin section, which is not the main melody, but that's, for me, that's the heartfelt part. It kind of that kind of completes the thing. So there was space to have more elements on top of each other than would be like in the Apocalyptica world. When we play the same instruments, we always have a lot of layers, but I think now it felt like it's almost unlimited in orchestra, that there are so many instruments in so many different registers. So I can actually layer more and more things on top of each other. So that was really cool.
Yeah, what I liked about the song is it really takes you on a journey. You go through all these different emotions, and it's very dynamic. Some parts are very, very slow and emotional, and the other parts are a little bit harsher and those kind of things. So what is, I don't know if when you post, do you think in terms of a narrative or a story, or is it just the music?
For me, it's just the music. It's just where the music wants to go. It's I think writing music is a lot about, it's not about me and my ego. It's actually more like trying to be out of the way where the music wants to go. I don't know where the music comes from, but the more I'm able to be out of its way and just go with the flow, it turns out better. I'm not forcing it to some kind of structure or form, but because then it gets this flow to me that I'm like, okay, it's more about the intensity, how the intensity goes and travels. And then I just start to feel that, okay, now it's time actually to breathe. Because we go like, we are like taking the maximum out, going crazy. And then there needs to be a balance on the breath. So I don't know. For me, it's more like music. It's just that how the music wants to flow, and I think the music has its own will where it wants to flow, and I think the best skill as the songwriter is to actually let that guide you. It's like how Bob Dylan said. I saw just recently some interview that he said that he had no idea where those fucking lines came from. His old legendary songs, like those amazing songs that he just says himself, he doesn't know where they came, just came, So that means that he's been out of the way, and the things have just come out. And it could be so that too often we start to control the creative process too much, based on our expectations and that kind of stuff. And what I try to do when I write music, I try not to force it too much. And then you can fine tune it. You can add things, but like to get the basic flow. So the collateral is kind of this kind of mini symphony in its own, of its own kind of thing, that it has those different worlds and stuff.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is because when it comes to classical music, or not classical music per se, but kind of orchestral music, especially when you put kind of a metal theme to it in a way, it sounds very cinematic. You mentioned the word earlier as well. It becomes this very epic, kind of these very powerful, epic pieces. So, are you aware kind of or what? I don't know how I should phrase this, but what kind of emotion are you trying to convey, or do you want people to have when they listen to this album, or when they come to a show?
I think the best thing that the music can do is like any art, that kind of lifts you up into a different dimension, that it's basically, it can create you a space where you forget yourself. You forget your worries and your stress and whatsoever, that it actually captures. It's like a great movie or any kind of art that at its best, it uplifts you into a space where the present moment is the only thing that matters. And that is something that for listener triggers the imagination. And I
Sure.
think that every listener experience is unique. All of us, instrumental music has the great power and possibility in that terms that there is no explanation for the music. So there is no guideline that you need to say what you should think when you listen to it. You actually get a free space to feel whatever emotions or whatever thoughts comes up to your mind because you're focusing on the music. So I think that's kind of the power of the music, that it creates you a space to be a little bit separate from the reality, be living in the moment, not worrying about the past or the future, and that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, very quickly then. For instance, I really like Midnite Son. What were the thoughts when you first played or heard Midnite Son? What were the thoughts that were coming up with that one?
When I got the first version from what Kristjan had done, I felt that okay, I want to add a little bit pain there, or a little bit of darkness in there. And so I changed that. I made a suggestion to change some chords, and also
Okay.
what I do in my part, I play a little bit dissonance, or like not the sweetest things. I wanted to have a little pain is probably not the right word, but like something that it kind of deepens the emotional feel
Sure.
a little bit. But it's a beautiful piece of music. It's kind of this kind of sort of meditation in a way, that it's based on very simple things that are very captivating, and it's brave enough to repeat those, to kind of not being in a rush to that all the time something needs to happen kind of thinking. So I really love the mood and the feel of the song.
Yeah, to me it was very hypnotic almost, and there's this a certain melancholy, perhaps. At least that's what I heard in it.
Yeah, I think I think the hypnotic thing, that it's like Kristjan who wrote the music, he loves this kind of shaman drums and this kind of that kind of approach, and and on top of that I wanted to have this little more melancholic twist there that makes it a little bit more metal in a way, that
Sure.
kind of changes the intensity into okay. I personally I like music which is in minor, and
Okay.
I find that healing. That's what Pride and Black is about to me. It's like it's to show that there is always brightness in darkness, brightness in darkness, because that's what metal is about.
Sure.
Some people who don't understand metal, they think that metal music is so dark and it's so depressing. No, for most metal fans, it's actually most healing, and this dark music is very empowering in a positive way that actually creates the positive emotions. And that's what I'm always searching on music, that there is this kind of, there's no light without darkness. You need to have
Yeah,
a balance.
definitely. But what I find interesting then, and this is kind of the last question, but I heard you say on an Instagram post, you were talking about kind of how classical music is perceived and how metal is perceived by kind of the big general public, and some people seem to elevate classical to here, and metal is down here, like a high art and low art, that kind of discussion. And for you, it's can I assume all music is on the same level for you?
Yeah, but when it comes to music styles, absolutely yes. But of course, there is a different level of music in every
Sure, there's different performance
style.
and yeah.
Some of the some of the music is a little bit more vague and some of it's deeper, and some music is more intellect, or some music is deeper in the emotions. But that happens in every musical genre.
Sure.
It's like poetry. It's, you know, poetry, there is poetry that resonates with you better than other ones, and I think
Sure.
that's the same thing with the music. And it's absolutely borderless in a way, in my world, that I don't evaluate what music style is somehow higher culture or more important or whatsoever. I think it's all about emotion. It's music is transferring emotions, and you can find emotions, what you feel you need, from all types of music.
Sure.
So I'm a metal fan, but I think 80% of metal is crap.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You know, it's or it at least doesn't talk to me, because I feel it's too
Sure.
vague. It's too, it doesn't have a, I for example, for me, metal is more attitude than a music style.
Okay.
It's attitude, that metal music, something to feel like it's metal, to me, needs to have this attitude and this certain intensity level. Like, that's why I said always that, like, Massive Attack is more metal than most of the metal bands.
Yeah, makes sense.
They have they, like, you know, Angel, it's dark as fuck, you know, and it has this like feeling. And I think most of metal bands, they don't reach that feeling, as even they try hard. So being loud and having a lot of distortion, or being fast or shouting, it doesn't make it really metal, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, sure.
But I think you understand what I mean, that it's more about the intensity. It's like that it's metal needs to be exciting. It needs to be exciting, and it can be exciting in so many different ways. But it's the energy of the music. That's what matters. And I think even electronic bands like Röyksopp, some of their stuff is more metal. I find it more like captivating and exciting, or, you know, so
yeah, it captures that identity, like you say.
yeah, exactly. It speaks to me. It goes deep in me, because there is something that really, it's like, oh, I feel it, you know. It's all about how you feel the music.
Yeah,
And that's why
exactly.
it's categorizing, like saying all classical music is somehow genius. No, it's not. There's a lot of like totally trashy classical music.
But do you
And you
think
can't categorize classical music as a one entity, because it's like, it's been written by thousands of composers over several centuries, and there's so different styles and emotions in classical music. So it's I don't even like to talk about as a one entity called classical music.
yeah, there's so many different types of any genre, so it's always funny how that gets dissected into these little boxes.
Yes.
I've one more question. I don't know if you have an answer for me yet, but you've been working on a new Apocalyptica album as well. And one thing I read is that you had some weeks of recording, then some weeks of doing other things, and then going back to recording. This way of working, how is that? What do you like that way of working, and how has that affected the music?
I really like we did this album, the Apocalyptica album, in 3 parts, or the recordings in 3 parts. And I really like it, because it's pretty hard and exhausting to be 8 weeks in a row in studio, to do 6 days a week,
Sure.
12, 14 hours every day. It's pretty drowning towards the end. So I think it was great that it was like, okay, 3 weeks all in, then we have a break, we get distance to the material of what we did, and we do other things, and then we come back, and we are able to elevate every time. I like, sometimes it's good to do things that, okay, we just do it, we just smash it out and we leave it. But the full album is such a fucking insane amount of work. It's such a huge thing to generate, and and to work 3 months a row, it's a lot. It's a lot to try to be intensely creative for such a long time with no breaks. So I actually prefer nowadays. Maybe I'm just getting old, but I prefer I prefer to work in the way that there are, it's in the blocks that there is time to get breathe and kind of distance to the material and let the subconscious mind to do its own processes, developing things and generating new ideas.
It feels like, especially you personally, you always seem to be working on something, always new music for Apocallyptica or some other project or something. How do you relax and how do you make sure the work-life balance stays healthy?
That's been a big practice for me. I quit alcohol like 5 years ago, and then I started to figure out, how to do things in a more clever way. And I think this is a never-ending learning process. But to me, the key is that I've learned to manage myself pretty well. So I'm not getting stressed easily in the way that how people kind of understand stress.
Sure.
Because I've understood that I need to do self-maintenance every day. So if I every day do something of my routines that I found are good for me, like, for example, doing yoga in the morning or meditating or doing micro meditations during the day, that kind of I'm resetting myself. So I'm not letting myself to just, start to swim in the shit. And then learning to prioritize what is the most important thing to do today and what is most urgent, and kind of accepting that I don't need to be available all the time, and I'm allowed to protect my own space. I think that those are the very, very key things. And then also like learning to say no to the things that are not actually deeply exciting for me. It's always like people ask, could you come to play on this record? It's like, oh yeah, it sounds great, blah blah blah. So I learned to say first, I don't know, let me think about it. I take time out, then I check, okay, is this thing aligned or where I actually want to go or not? If it's not, then I'm like, no, I don't use my time and energy to do that because I'm focused on, I want to go there. So I have become actually really productive. Like in August, I released my book, the autobiography. I also launched a jewelry brand.
Right.
I'm doing life coaching. So I have my own business as a life coach. I've just learned to do things so that I don't let them overcome, the priority of things is not colliding. So I know that, okay, this is most important thing to do. So if I want to do coaching, I can have only 1 or 2 clients. Then it stays in the balance. If I start to want to have more clients, then it starts to, comes the battle that, okay, I should do this and that and that. And it's too many things to do at the same time. So it's a lot of practice of, let me put it in a nutshell. The better we understand ourselves and the better we understand what we truly want in this life, the easier it becomes to do the things that matter the most to us. And that makes us very effective and productive. Also learning to ask for help. That's a big thing. Understanding that we don't need to do everything alone. But also having rest.
And I mean, it's very impressive to hear somebody like you say that, because everybody knows how hard you work, but to hear that you have this, you figured out how to be efficient and to do it in a healthy way is very inspiring, I think.
Yeah, and a big thing is like to decide to do things joyfully.